Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. It's Talamic here with DNB Academy, and I want to take a look at why I tend to advise people don't focus too much on how things sound in solo, because everything is contextual, and that's a far more important way to review your mixes. So I've got this tune here that Noppo and I did with Montague, came out on Liquidity last year. Sounds a little bit like this.
Light, you touch me and it's all I need. Held down by your gravity.
Deep little liquid tune. And we'll start with the basses because they're quite a nice one. I won't name the YouTuber because I don't think that that's really the goal. But there was a YouTuber a while ago who used to do a lot of sound design tutorials. And then I would hear people who had clearly watched his sound design tutorials and then tried to make tunes based off of just knowing that information. And again, that's not like a dig at that YouTuber because, as I said, I don't think that's really their fault. I think basically people were trying to like fit these like massive sounds into this mix, and that's the fault of the producer, not the YouTuber. So yeah, I would often see people like make, as I said, like massive sounds, and then they'd be trying to cram them in. And in reality, a lot of the sounds that I have in here, this has a bunch of like little filler basses. These aren't like massive sounds. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But yeah, if I play, say, this section here. Oh, there's another one over here. And I suppose even that's soloed, so contextually.
In the deepest parts of me, get under my skin.
And they're like resampled from various things and then processed in various ways. I think both of them were using operator, if that matters. Anyway, on their own, they all sound really quite thin. There's not a lot of low end. There's not a lot of body to any of them. You can see I've cut all the low end out of that one and this one. So on their own, and there's some later ones that start sounding a bit weird as well. That one, and yeah, and they're all through the tune. They're like slightly different sounds, I think. Yeah, they're all like slightly different variations of like a long sound design project. But yeah, they're all high passed to oblivion, and on their own, I'd be tempted to be like, oh well, I need to do this to the low end, or I need to bump this up, or I need to affect this in some way, or bring out some brightness or whatever. But first of all, they're happening underneath the vocal, so there's that to consider.
In the deepest parts of me.
And they're also happening on top of a sub, or like a low res. Which is more important to the tune. So when I'm teaching people mixing, my general approach is that we pick elements that are important to the tune. In some tunes like this, it's really obvious, like the important thing is Anna and Montague's vocal.
Gravity.
That's everything needs to fit around that point. But in some tunes that might be like a certain lead or an arp, or like, you know, it may even be the drums in certain situations. You decide that. That's the kind of creative choice that you make when you're doing your mix down. And then everything else is sitting behind that. So if I'm like mixing, first of all, like mixing this relative to the vocal, I have to be conscious that if I'm adding too much like mid to something, then it's going to conflict with the vocal. But then I also need to make minute decisions based off that same logic. So here, we've got these two. If I take the sub out of the sub to make room for this bass, then I then need to, like, I'm completely removing any reason to have this main res here. And I like the fact that that sits underneath, there's a bed underneath everything else. So then the decision is then made, okay, well, this is a secondary sound, a sort of complementary sound behind the main bass. And so we need to remove the low end. If I wanted to keep the low end in here, you know, so it was like with that low sub, I would then just remove the res. So it kind of disappeared at that moment. But yeah, that wasn't what was happening there. And so that decision's then been made to cut that out. If we were then looking at some of the other sounds, we go through here. Like something like this. If I was listening to this on its own, you're like, okay, well, it needs like some low. I mean, this has already been EQ'd and bounced. I imagine it was one of Nick Knoppo's stems. I think I cut it up, but it was Nick's stem. But he would have followed the same practice that I'm following now. On its own, if we look at it in an EQ, there's no low end, there's no body, there's no nothing supporting it. It's a very thin sound. It's nice, it sounds great, but it's quite thin. Doesn't matter. We've got, first of all, these chords underneath, which are supporting those low notes a little bit better. But then we've also got this low bass as well, right? So again, contextually, on its own, you know, you're sat there like, oh well, it needs this, it needs that, it needs that. Everything in your mix is contextual. You know, if we look at another element, let's find another one. Even the entire atmosphere bus. It's all sitting really far back. It's all very echoey. There's a lot of layers in there, you know, and there's some more in there, but it's just all sitting behind this. First of all, this main vocal, you can see we've EQ'd out a little bit of space for that vocal as well.
All I need, held down by your gravity.
And then the bass that we keep coming back to.
All I need.
And you can kind of see everything start filling out and making more sense. Then we've got the chords.
All I need, held down by your gravity.
And then we've got the drums.
In the deepest parts of me, get under my skin, get under my skin.
And you can see that the context of everything builds up to make everything make sense. Another good example is this like weird kind of foghorn sound down here at the bottom. Which sounds way more menacing with all the low end on it. Which sounds quite thin and may even sound like more powerful, I guess, technically on its own, if it was an octave lower. We'll try and see. But it all then goes into context as soon as you layer everything underneath. So yeah, it's about just making sure that whenever you're mixing, I realize I repeat myself a bunch this time, but hopefully there's the message has gone in. Yeah, just check everything in context. Be aware of what else is happening at the same time. It's one of the things that you can also apply. Like I see a lot people saying, "Oh, high pass everything except your bass." I don't need to do that here because the bass isn't playing, and so what is occupying my bass of my low end is these chords.
Pulls me in, holding you again. Oh, I'll never want to find out if the light it ever goes out. Feels just.
And so I don't need to do any editing to those in the low end, because that is the thing that is occupying and driving that space. If this was happening at the over where the bass is, which you can see that it doesn't at any point in the tune anyway, then I would need to high pass it. But it's all about context. Make sure you're checking your context. And yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Any questions, let us know, and I'll catch you in the next one.